Okay, so I made my next cut, and I did it because off camera, because I had to be on the floor because it's a small piece, right? I'm making small panels. Now, here's a side note. Never lay your drywall on the floor to cut, okay? I didn't even put mine on the floor. It was so small, I actually had it laying on top of my little ladder here. And the reason being is that anything could be on the floor, whether it's a piece of broken drywall, if it's a screw, and what's gonna happen if you lay it down and put pressure on that, it's gonna push it up and it could crack the drywall and give you unnecessary damages you don't need. So what I suggest, if you saw my first video of cutting the drywall, is stand it up against something, against a stack of drywall, lean it up against the wall, lean it up against something if possible, and cut it while you're standing up. Again, I just did it because I have these smaller pieces that I'm trying to do for training purposes here. So I had it on the floor and I didn't want to keep adjusting the camera. Anyways, so here's our first obstacle, right? I want to make this as real as possible. So let's say there's a ceiling fan, let's say there's a fixture box, let's say there's a junction box, whatever there is. I have one up here, right here, that I put up, right, while I was doing the framing. So now my piece is cut to fit. However, it won't go up because it's hitting this obstacle, right? Okay, cool. So how do we fix that? Real easy, okay? So the way you're gonna cut it is left to right, top to bottom, or center cut, okay? So there's two ways you can do this, okay? Now again, if you're working with somebody else, they have to be on the same page at what you're calling the cuts, but if you're by yourself, then you just need to write down what your thing is. So the two ways to do this is, the easier of the two is you go off of one side. I'm gonna go off of this side here, and I'm just gonna call it 33 to center, okay? So I'm gonna mark it for me, 33 to center, and then I'm gonna mark it about 15 to center. I'm sorry, let me do that again. So this would be left to right, okay, so I'm going left to right. It's 33 to center, and then I'm gonna call this bottom to top. Or back to front. We'll say back to front, right? So back to front is 15 on center, okay? So that's one way you can do it. And then I'm gonna figure this out. The second way you can do it is calling left to right or right to left again, okay? But this time you're gonna call to and through, okay? To and through. So what that means is you start at one end, and to it is about 30 and a half, through it is about 35 and a half. So let's say left to right is 30 and a half, and then through it is 35 and a quarter, okay? So to it and through it, or center, and then if you're going back to front, we're gonna say 13 to 18. Back to front is 13 to 18, okay? So again, it's your preference. You can either call the center of the object that you need to cut out, and that way you know, okay, I'm gonna cut there, and then when I show you how to use one of the tools to cut, which is different than the tools that we use to cut the full sheets, but when you're gonna do your cutouts, you can either find the center, or you can go to and through it, which is to it, that object on one side, and then through it, what's the outcut of the other side. So it's whatever you prefer. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure my drywall, right? I'm gonna go off my drywall now, and using those numbers, I gotta do a little bit of rasping on this real quick. So a little smoother. Okay, so using my numbers, I'm gonna make a mark. So I'm just gonna go center. I'm just gonna call it center, okay? So from left to right, I know this side is what I'm gonna put here because I'm gonna use my factory edge, which is the good side that the drywall, the clean drywall, I didn't cut off this, is gonna butt up to the other factory edge that I already hung, and that side is clean also. So I'm gonna have two clean edges that touch each other. The ugly edges, the cut sides, that I don't care what they look like, are gonna go into the corners of the framing, okay? So, if I'm gonna say starting off left to right, then I'm gonna call this here, left to right. I have it marked down up there at 33 as center. Okay. So you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I have it going left to right. I marked at 33, and then from back to front. Now the ugly side is my back. The ugly side is the part that goes against the wall. The clean factory side, that side with that recess, is what's going to be in the middle of my ceiling. Okay. So I'm going to hold that tape by the 33 mark, and it's going to be at 15. So that's right almost at the end of my board. My board is only 16 inches in width, so it's at 15. So let me do this again. So okay. So my center is going to be 33. My back to front is going to be 15. There's where my cut's going to be. Okay. So now I have two choices. I can either hang it and cut it while it's hanging up, or I can see approximately how big this is, which is about 4.5 by 4.5. So I can make a cut while it's down here and then see if it goes up and see how bad I mess up my cut, right? Again, it doesn't matter if you overshoot, if you make the hole too big, because in the process called detailing, we're gonna detail and make all those enlarged holes cut smaller, okay? So for this one, I'm just gonna use a keyhole saw. And what I'm gonna do is, again, these are little boards, so it's kind of hard. I'm gonna hold this against the wall back there, and I'm gonna start cutting in a circular motion to give me some kind of an outline of the outlet I got up there. Actually, I'm lying. I'm gonna puncture it first, and then that way it'll give me a starting point. The other way you do it, so using the keyhole saw, I ran through it and I started cutting down, okay? Now, because I don't want this part to break because it's at the very end, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use my knife and I'm just gonna scribe it. I'm gonna give a little bit of a scribe right here, okay? You see that? And then I'm just gonna break it. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be pretty. You can kind of round it off. Okay, now let's see what this looks like. Something else I didn't mention, you want to mark your studs, because once your drywall is up there, you're not going to be able to see it. So I was able to see this one because only half of it's hung, okay? So the second side is going to be completely covered, so what you want to do is you want to mark the studs on the bottom stud. So I know there's a stud here, I know there's a stud here, I know there's a stud here. So those are going to be my markings to know I mark some lines where the studs are, so that way, I'll show you guys. So there's a line up there, you should be able to see it. There's a line there. And that way you know where your stud's at, so you can screw it to it. Okay, so let me screw this up there and we'll see what it looks like. And yeah, so that's that's how life goes. I cut it backwards. Yeah, I cut it backwards. So now I'm gonna have to do a patch here anyways. Learning purposes, right? So let me just do it this way. I'm gonna mark it here. I'm gonna mark it here. And I'm gonna make that cut. I'll be honest with you, I ain't the greatest hanger, right? It is what it is. Okay, so I rounded up my circle. Look, I make mistakes. But be real, if I didn't know how to fix it, I'd be a little bit more concerned, but I know how to fix it, so I really don't care. All right. So on this one, you're just gonna go ahead and do in between every other one because it's the one that butts up with that other piece.